Hello, and welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Recapping Podcast.
Also, rate, review, and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the things.
We want to hear your thoughts on the movies and shows we review.
Leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or our YouTube channel, and we will read them during the show.
Or reach out to us on social media. We love talking all things entertainment and pop culture with you.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
All right, Delora. We are back and the Summer Olympics are upon us. Are you excited?
I am. I am super excited. It's my favorite time of the year.
Well, not just for this, for other reasons as well. But
yeah.
What outside of gymnastics, which we will be covering today, what else has got you excited for Summer Olympics?
Track and field, swimming. I enjoy a good diving moment. I never seem to be able to catch synchronized swimming though. Like, I don't know if whenever they recorded in the past, it's during hours that I'm either asleep or doing something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have to look at the full schedule too, because I have stuck with the same sports for the Olympics forever. And I'm like, maybe it's time for me to go outside of my comfort zone and try to see if I get into anything else. Yeah, even indoor volleyball. Like I'll watch some sand volleyball.
Yeah.
But I don't even really watch indoor volleyball.
I don't either.
I may be missing out on some stuff. Yeah.
Right. And we talked about this in our last conversation. Breakdancing is now a new Olympic sport.
Yeah. Crazy.
Insane.
Well, all that sounds great, but inevitably gymnastics is always and forever probably going to be one of the most highly anticipated for the sheer athleticism, physicality, risk that's involved. And so today we are talking about the GOAT of the sport of gymnastics, okay?
Yep.
The Simone Biles. She has a 2-part, which will soon to be 4-part documentary on Netflix called Simone Biles Rising. It was available as of July. Quick summary. The gymnastics superstar withdrew from the 2020 Tokyo Olympics due to mental health concerns. After a hiatus, she embarked on a journey to rebuild her skills and mental fortitude, preparing for her triumphant return. For cast, I just have Simone Biles and family. You get a mixture of people. You have Dominique Dawes, you have Beverly Aquino, you have some other folks Betty Aquino. You have some other folks who pop up, but for the most part, this is about Simone and her family.
And her coaches. Yeah, no.
Yes. And her teammates, but It's Simone and her family. So reviews, Rotten Tomatoes, currently it has 100% critic score, 50% audience score, which I feel like are just a bunch of haters. And then 91% of Google users gave this a thumbs up. Delora, what is your grade for Simone Biles Rising?
Well, we only have half of the series, but the half we have seen, I give it an A. It is well done. I love a good documentary moment, and sports documentary is its own genre, and it's truly fascinating. It's engaging. I like the pacing of it. I like how they weave aspects of her life throughout the episodes. We get a lot in the 2 episodes we have so far, and it positions Simone in a space that I'm grateful for, in terms of, I love her humanity we get a chance to see in the series. One quote that had me in my feelings, she's like, people put me on these pedestals and I'm begging to be human. And I was like, I think it's interesting, and we'll talk more about this obviously once we get into the recap, that our greats are doing this. Like when Beyonce gave us Homecoming, she was very adamant at that point, showing her humanity. At that point, she was, at the pinnacle of her career, but she also just had babies, right? And she's like, this type of greatness was not done overnight. There's a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work that went into this. And I feel like, you know, it's not just luck. It's like it's my excellence, but I'm also still human. And I think that's a interesting conversation and a needed conversation. And I love my Black women so much. I'm rooting for y'all.
Absolutely. I give this an A as well. To your point, we only have half, and the first half was riveting. So I cannot wait to get a chance to see post Olympics what all they were able to capture and what her sentiments were, given that this is likely her final Olympic run, because she is 27, as she discusses in the documentary. And coming from the disappointment of Tokyo for herself personally, I loved getting to get this behind the scenes look into what it took for her to really prioritize her health and be able to come back in full effect like she has been lately. So I'm grateful for the glimpse. As my mom said, while we were watching this, it's so nice to be able to live through these greatest of all times folks within our lifetimes. And I just don't take for granted that we were alive to see
Yes.
someone at the level of talent as a Simone Biles.
Yep.
So thrilled to get a chance to see behind the curtain a little bit in this documentary. So, spoiler alert, let's get into it. This documentary really starts out with the version of Simone Biles that we all know, which is quite accomplished, considered the GOAT of the sport. She was going into the Tokyo Olympics highly favored to continue her dominance. This was going to be the feather in her cap, potential highlight of her career. And they really projected her out as the face of the Olympics. And with that came a lot of pressure. And I think Simone talks about the amount of pressure she felt. And as a result of that and other factors, when she first steps out, we see her not performing as usual, right? It seems like she's lost her balance, her footing. She's lost in the air. And at first it seemed like, oh, maybe that was just a one-time thing. She gets up, she tries to do another. Nope, seems like it's still happening. And so I want to start out with this whole idea of the twisties and the mental health concerns. Do you remember watching this Olympic start and the media coverage that followed?
Absolutely. It feels like it was just yesterday. I say that because we were a baby podcast. I mean, we still are young ish,
We are. We're four.
We're four, but we were like one. I don't think we were one yet when we had this conversation about Simone Biles. And it was such an important conversation because, to give context, this was like shortly after Meghan Markle and Prince Harry left the royal family. And I remember saying this, and it's probably one of our clips on our social media, that I think it's time for Black women to stop sacrificing ourselves to make everyone else feel comfortable. Like, we have always been, unfortunately, African American women in particular, value based off our productivity, right? What we're able to produce, what we're able to give, without society really caring how we are and how we feel. And for Simone Biles, she has given so much to the sport of gymnastics, representing this country amazingly. At the time in Tokyo in particular, her medal count isn't even what it is now, but still, she was the best in the world. And she had the twisties. She had an issue that prevented her to perform at her best, and she stepped out, and people called her a quitter. And it's like, why are we so quick to give up on her when she gave so much? Like, the bare minimum we could have given her is grace.
I think when I look back and I see even the sports commentators calling her a quitter, I feel like there's just not, for one, enough knowledge and information available for the challenges that gymnasts face compared to like basketball players or football players or what have you.
Right.
Also, she's a woman. And I feel like as a woman, she was judged so much more harshly than I feel like some of her male competitors are for different things, for different
Yeah.
situations. And
Yeah.
so, again, Simone does things that are beyond scope for pretty much anybody else. That's why she has multiple now. She has 5 elements named after her, right? Because
5.
she challenges herself and her body and her physicality in ways that other people cannot, not just won't, cannot, right? Rules
Right.
have been changed because of the things that Simone Biles is able to do. And so looking back, I was just like, the amount of first, building her up, then tearing her down alone had to be a lot, right? Had to be a
Yeah.
lot for anybody to deal with. But then you kind of roll into that the fact that we knew that she had been a part of the scandal with Larry Nasser,
Yep.
the teen doctor, and the
Yep.
mental health toll that also took. So they also talk about that as a part of this documentary, and the fact that probably a lot of things came on Simone at the same time that affected her mental health. Because as her coach said, twisties are mental, but it rarely has anything to actually do with gymnastics. It's
Right.
factors outside of gymnastics.
And
So
it puts her at such great risk. And to your point in like educating the public, it's like, do y'all realize if she is unable to perform, she can severely hurt herself.
she could die.
Easy.
She
Right.
could die. So do you think that the documentary is doing a better job and is helpful into kind of pushing that narrative more forward so that people are more aware of the impact and the possibilities that gymnasts now moving forward could face?
I believe this portion was first because people want to get to the mess first. Like this was like so monumental. No one has ever done anything like this ever. We grew up in the generation where Carrie Strug did that second vault and probably permanently injured her what ankle or foot or something, but
Yeah, I
she
think
did
she
it
had
for
like
the
ripped
goal.
tendons,
Right.
inevitably. Yep.
She couldn't even walk after she did that second vault. And that's the level of sacrifice that this country anticipated. Like we go for blood. And I feel like they started this documentary with this part of the story because we know what this is. This is the journey to her third Olympics, which is also she's already in rare air. This is not only her third Olympics, she's expected to win because people who are able to make it to the Olympics, by the time you're at her age, you are it's like nice to be there participation trophy level, not being the best in the world. And so they knew people wanted to know what went on during Tokyo and what's going to be different this time around. And I really do appreciate the journey that they showed that she essentially had to go back to the basics.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Carrie Strug because the next kind of facet that I wanted to talk about was that discussion of past gymnasts like Dominique Dawes, Betty Aquino, and the idea that this generation of athletes are not as tough as their predecessors, right? And that they're soft and that they don't rise to the same level of competition as those past athletes did. Now, given the documentary highlights heavily on the fact that they just weren't, their well-being was not remotely prioritized, but
They were vessels.
what do you think about just in sports in general? I mean, it's a bigger conversation than just gymnastics. They even said about like men's basketball, all sorts of things. Where do you fall in the debate of like, this generation is soft compared to the generation that preceded in terms of the level of competition?
I think you have to look at two things. One, the rules have changed. The rules that Dominique Dawes and Betty Aquino went through in 1992, the scoring and everything is completely different than what it is today. And the level of athleticism is much higher today than it was then too. And so is it softer? The culture, maybe, because especially in the United States, our girls went through some things, okay, that were unacceptable and might, I wouldn't be surprised to have lifelong lasting impact.
Mm.
So we don't want to go there, especially when, and I know we'll get there, but the fact that these girls' parents completely trusted them and they didn't even show up to that camp. It's so funny. I was talking to my director one day and we were talking about cruises and they're like, oh yeah, my friend loves taking their kids to the cruises and they drop them off at the kids center or whatever and they do their thing. I was like, that would never happen. I don't know these niggas. Like, I don't know these people. Shout out to Tommy Davis. That's the quote I'm quoting there. I'm not leaving my child anywhere. And
Correct.
we kind of joked that said, oh, well, you know, you only have one versus people who may have more than one. I'm like, that's cute. That won't be happening. I don't know these people. Okay. I am not willingly leaving my child by themselves. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Say what you need to say. Okay. About
There's
what you
way
think.
too much that goes on in the world. Way too much that goes on in the world. I was even watching a family recently. I think we were out like to breakfast, and it was the mom and dad, brother, and the little sister. And the little boy was in front, dad was second, mom was third, and a little girl was at the back. And I remember literally saying out loud, like, why is the little girl in the back? Like, because everybody else is going far ahead of her. Like, why is my child behind me, for one, on
No,
a
thank
busy
you.
street, for two, and possibly could get snatched up for three? Like, I just, you know, you got to keep your eyes on
You were raised by a
people.
black mama. Okay.
Girl. Girl. So no, I understand. But I think you made some fair points. I know I've definitely said it about basketball players, but I've also said that if you think about it, people just have a greater appreciation for their worth and a greater sense of control now than they ever have over their careers and
Yes.
over you know, they're not just slaves to the system. They're not just robots that are controlled by their coaches, by their teams, by their organizations. They're so much more empowered
Yes.
now than they were in generations past. I mean, we even saw that with Hollywood, taking it back to like Hollywood, the golden age of Hollywood. People love it, love to reminisce, but they were slaves.
They really were. And that's how almost half of them died from OD drug overdose, not even trying to be funny because of the stress they were under. And then speaking to basketball, the reason why basketball was so good when we were growing up was because it was in its heyday. The NBA was the wild, wild west in the 70s and 80s. Of course, they were throwing bows and shit talking like crazy.
Still wearing them short shorts.
Exactly. By the time we got to the 90s, it became more acceptable, right? The viewership started competing with football and baseball. And, you know, more money was poured into it. Therefore, it had to clean up a little bit, right? And now everybody's like, yeah, it's soft now because the NBA is normal now. Like there, you know what I mean? It's coasting at this rate, right?
Well, that's
That's
why
why
we got the
everybody
WNBA
WNBA, right?
that's taking over
And
and is
these girls are
excitement.
crazy.
Yeah.
And are they crazy? Honestly, they probably doing the same things that they did back in the 80s and 70s
Yeah.
in the NBA. But now they got more people watching them. So therefore, you know, oh my gosh, these girls are throwing bows and shit talking. Yes, they are.
Speaking of the WNBA, and I meant to have it on my hidden gems list, but there is a great documentary on Netflix about the impact of the WNBA's influence over the election in Georgia where Raphael Warnock won. And
Ooh, I remember those
also,
girls campaigning.
yep. And
Yes.
also, you know, just talking about the Breonna Taylor case and the fact that they wore Breonna Taylor's name and this whole say her name. movement, and it was great. And so even when we're talking about politics and we're talking about the upcoming election, I guarantee you they're going to be hyper involved and hyper motivated.
And it's because of their activism, they put the men's sports to shame on
Yep.
some of these topics because
Yep.
they were very vocal. And I think they applied the pressure that was needed for our stars to start saying something.
Absolutely. I mean, some of them even took the season off to full-fledged
Yep.
be a part of movement. So yeah, definitely hats off to them. But let's move into beauty standards while we're still talking about gymnasts from the
Whew.
past, right? Because we have
Yep.
Dominique and Betty who are talking about, hair. And obviously we know Gabby Douglas was heavily criticized when she won and became the first Black woman to win all around gold at the Olympics. And she was heavily criticized for her hair. Simone has been criticized for her hair. And just going back to the fact that the beauty standard is white blonde women, right, who naturally have straight hair, and the physical aspects as a part of that too. Dominique Dawes speaks about the fact that her coaches would push on her feet till her bones were popping out because she has flat
She had
feet.
flat feet.
And she said
Shout out
she
to being
knew
Black.
she knew just stepping out there that her physical appearance was a deduction, right? That
Girl.
she was not the beauty standard. She was not the standard that they were looking for. And so what were your thoughts about this idea that gymnastics beauty standards are still not ones that we, even though we dominate the sport at this point, that we can necessarily subscribe to or be the face of?
I appreciated this section of the documentary. I have even in my notes, I'm like, Black women in hair. I can guarantee you, any Black woman can go anywhere in this country and spend like an hour talking about hair to somebody else. Like, you know what I mean? It has always been so stigmatized in our culture. And, we live in a time where we're truly embracing our hair even more than in the 70s, because you go through the perm era, which, let's not even talk about the chemicals they put in those products to quote unquote straighten our hair so
Mm-hmm.
we can look like the status quo, killing ourselves so we can fit in. And we have the 70s, but then it's like we went to the 80s because we were in these corporate spaces, right? And we had to look a certain way. I'm glad they talked about it. Honestly, I got really emotional watching it for two reasons. The first reason was because, like, we celebrate the pioneers, but they deserve and need so much more love than what we give them. The people who are cracking the ceiling, and you have Simone who actually broke it down, shattered it, and was tap dancing on it, because you get cut. You get cut in the process, and who knows how deep these cuts are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And thinking to Gabby Douglas and all that she went through, she was 16 years old, the first Black woman to win the all around at the Olympics. And they were talking about her hair. We did it to Serena, not we, but our culture did it to Serena and Venus with their beads.
Sitting at
Be
home
too
on the
old to be
comfort,
wearing beads.
sitting at home in the comfort of couches, can't even do cartwheels, can't return a serve, may not even be able to make a serve. You got these are top tier athletes.
Ashley, part of the reason why I didn't do sports is because I didn't like to sweat. You know how much sweating is involved?
Girl. It's
And our hair
ridiculous.
naturally reverts to the coil, okay?
It's ridiculous. And it kind of makes you feel ashamed when you watch it back and you hear the perspective. Because I think one of the reasons why some people are comfortable being so loud is because they don't remember that it actually touches that person, right? I think once people reach a certain status, once people reach a certain level of fame, celebrity, accomplishment, people start to forget that your words still will permeate through and hurt that person. that what you're saying can still overshadow because they're still human. To Simone's point, to Beyonce, to anybody else, they're still human beings. And so
Yeah.
what you say about them and your perspective on them, especially when it's coming from your own community, is very, very hurtful. So I felt like a little bit of shame in the sense of like, we really got to do better. Like, we really have to stop focusing so heavily on people's physical appearances and being so loud with those opinions.
Because racist people don't care if your hair is straight, if it's curly, if it's colored. Like, you're brown. That's the problem. That's their problem. It's not even your problem, right?
Yeah, for sure. Let's move into Simone's personal life, right? Because we get a chance to hear a lot from her husband. And I have to be honest, the story about him first meeting her and her height scaring him, I cackled. Like, I
She
cackled.
is 4'8".
I know. Hilarious.
And I think he's tall. I think he's like at least 6'4".
Yeah, I mean, he's a professional football player, so I have no doubt he's 6 foot something. But I cackled because I was like, yeah, if she hopped out the car, her little ass probably would have scared me too. Because you don't know till you know. You don't know till you see it. And
so
he's
5'11".
Okay.
5'11".
Got it. And so I thought that was funny, but I enjoyed getting this glimpse at, her relationship with her parents because, she was adopted. So she was adopted by her biological grandfather and his wife, her grandmother, who she now calls her parents. Both her and her younger sister were adopted by them. Her older two siblings were adopted by an aunt. And so to hear more about that, to see the dynamic, especially like moments of like her mom braiding her hair was super endearing, but particularly given the hoopla about her marriage after that podcast interview, I needed this because
I did too.
I found him so much cuter and them so much cuter getting to see this expanded version of their relationship.
I definitely think it was intentional for this documentary. Because the first time you get the mic, it looks like you're playing in your wife's face. I'm sorry, Simone. I know that's your husband, but you got to know what this looked like. Okay.
Yep.
And he is there supporting her and loving her. And it's like, we want him to know who he married. Okay. We don't need for you to dim your light for him to feel like something. And I appreciate her even addressing that as being a wag. She's like, she can relax. Yo, boo. Yay.
Spotlight is on you for once, not over here. I get to just be a regular little person.
She brought his story again, Simone Biles' husband's story to the forefront. And the fact that he wasn't drafted and he worked hard to get to where he is. I'm like, yay him. Woo!
Yeah, but even just the family dynamic, seeing how he interacts with her family, seeing how he interacts with her sister, you know what I mean?
That's
like
important.
Just very endearing, like moments of like, okay, I see it. Like, I see it now. I get it now in a way that we had not gotten a chance to kind of see behind the curtain before. And so
didn't know who she was.
I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna let it 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 go.
I'll be there with you, Ashley, letting it go.
Yeah. I'm gonna let it go. But I also have to say that I appreciated that they touched on the fact that because of the COVID restrictions, Tokyo was the first time she did not have that community and family support. And that also had a huge impact on her. And I'm sure all those athletes' mental health, when you think back to how challenging the time was for us just in general. And then you compound that with the level of athleticism and travel and isolation.
Girl.
Like, I was like, I don't even know why we still had the Tokyo Olympics, if I'm honest.
Honestly, looking back at it, I'm like, why did we do it?
Yeah.
It didn't seem necessary.
No.
Unless there was just too much money that had to be spent or something. You know what I mean?
They could have found
other things. But the world shut down. So what?
They could have found other things. It felt dangerous for one. And for two, like I said, it just didn't seem like a healthy environment, both physically and mentally, for any of those athletes. So let's talk about the comeback. You mentioned earlier that as a part of kind of her rehabilitation after she had the twisties, she had to take her time and go back to the very basics of gymnastics. We see her going to the gym and just kind of jumping on the trampoline and kind of playing around a little bit. I mean, she spent a year and a half rebuilding herself physically and mentally, and having very off days, having great days, having days where she was lost in her skills and emotional and crying. And, it was so, I guess, humbling to see somebody at her level have to go through that.
Humbling is the word, because that's the word that came to mind when I was watching it. And I think that says a lot to her leadership, because like with being the best, you are the leader of your sport, right? And she's obviously the leader of her gym, and to be that example to those young women, I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah. And she also mentioned how much they saved her, right? Like the camaraderie with the other
Yes.
gymnasts really uplifted her and kept her spirits up when she was going through this really, really hard time. And therapy, because she does speak about therapy and spoke about even her having to go through this, and going to therapy helped her husband realize that he needed to see somebody, because sports and being a professional athlete is rigorous and it's tough. I really appreciated that focus on therapy and the benefits and the mental health aspects that she and other professional athletes face. And so I guess really the final topic I kind of wanted to cover as a part of this is kind of what surprised you about the journey in the documentary. I have a couple of things that surprised me, but were there any revelations or anything that was brought up that was like, that's interesting, or I didn't know that?
I hate to say it, but I really didn't know much about Betty Okino as much. And I vaguely remember Dominique Dawes in 1992. The only reason why I know she went to Olympus in 1992 because I remember her in 1996, because that I was old enough to register dates and times and people. 1992, that was not the case for me. Okay, I was very, 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 very young.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh my goodness, I love that we're hearing from both of them, and their experiences. I'm loving all the cameos. Ali, we have Dominique Moceanu coming up. Even the I believe she was Russian gymnast. I forget her name, but she was pretty much vocal. I missed Gabby Douglas. I don't know how. Okay, how am I going to phrase this, Ashley? So in 2016, Gabby was on the team. Obviously, she was the reigning all around champion, and Simone was poised to win, because Simone, once she got onto the national stage, she's always poised to win. I mean, but it would have been nice to get Gabby Douglas perspective, but I don't know how friendly everyone is. I know Gabby wasn't in a lot of those like team pictures and like groups. I don't know what the dynamics were necessarily, but it just would have been nice to see her. And again, I got emotional. So I talked about the emotion of like hearing the story of these gymnasts and the things that they've overcame, especially the Black gymnasts. But like greatness gets me emotional. And the fact that Simone Biles, 37 medals, she has 6 world titles. She hasn't lost a meet in worlds that she competed in. And the fact that the last one, the entire panel were Black women, I'm getting emotional now, okay? Because I don't think gymnastics was ever a route for me as a little Black girl in Michigan. But for the young girls of today to have so many examples of like excellence, leaders in the field. It just means so much to me. It means so much to me for little Delora as well as my baby. And the kids that get a chance to live in this era where you've had Black presidents, you've had golf stars, tennis stars, gymnasts, first woman president. Like
Supreme
that's all
Court Justice. Yeah.
within reach. The fact that these things are within reach when those things were just not the status quo as we were growing up. Like it gets me every time, Ashley. It gets me right here.
Yeah. I mean, it is beautiful to see. I wish we weren't going through such an extreme backlash and attempt to take us backwards as a part of this time in history as well. But we'll save that for another day. I just want to say that the biggest thing that surprised me, given Simone's level of ability, accomplishment, and feats that she's pushed herself to do, is that she's still always scared. That even doing her big moves, she is scared every single time, and that she's trying not to die. So all I kept thinking was, for one, mad respect to you for doing that every single time that you have put your body on the line in that way, but also do it and do it scared was a big lesson to take from that.
And again, it's just stress the humanity of it all. But the biggest flex for me, in light of the fear that she operates in every day and the mantras that she has to tell herself to make it through, she's like, the only competition is myself.
At this point, it's still me against me, baby. And what a wink, wink way to end it all. Kiss to the camera. I'll see y'all. Loved it. Any final thoughts for Simone Biles Rising episodes 1 and 2?
I can't wait to see what the second half looks like. I already saw news today that Simone has opted out of individual interviews before her competition, and she will talk only post. So I'm like, yes, sis, keep your mind right.
That part. Do what you got to do, girl.
Exactly. I'm excited for her. I'm rooting for her. I'm rooting for the entire team. I love Jordan Childs. I love Jordan Childs so much. And Suni Lee is the sweetest. I'm just really excited for our team.
Let's get it. All right, Delora, let's move into our hidden gems for the week. What you got?
Well, there's a new Descendants movie on Disney Plus. And for people who may not know, Descendants is, I think, bigger than High School Musical when it comes to like the popularity and the cultural resonance. And I've watched Descendants, the first 3. This is the first like spinoff. This one is called The Rise of Red. And it has gone platinum in this household. We have my girl Uma. If you know this series, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Shout out to China. She returns as the principal of the school of all the children of our favorite fairy tale heroes. And apparently the Queen of Hearts and her daughter are still in exile. And since Uma's in charge, she's sending an olive branch to introduce them into their world. The whole conversation about integration. And what I love so much about this movie, Ashley, is the Brandy has returned as Cinderella. And Paulo has returned as Prince Charming. I'm sorry, King Charming. And they have a daughter. And I have lost my mind. Speaking of being emotional, they have one song together, Ashley, in this movie. and I lost my sugar honey iced tea. I was like, we have recapped the Rogers and Hammerstein Cinderella, the one that was produced by the Whitney Houston. It is a staple of my childhood, and to see them revisit these characters at my big old age means everything to me. And even outside of their appearance, because obviously it's not about them, it's about their daughter. There are some really fun songs for this movie, and it's also starring Rita Ora, and I think this is some of Rita Ora's best work.
Wow. Rita loves a fantasy. She was in another fantasy movie that was on like Amazon Prime. She loves fantasy.
Does she? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, her husband is
Taika Waititi.
yes, ma'am. So that's my hidden gem this week. How about you, Ashley?
All right, I actually have two for y'all. Like I said, I was going to give it a think because I know I've been watching some stuff. So I have two. The first one is Land of Women, currently on Apple TV Plus, starring Eva Longoria. She is a New York socialite who's forced to flee the country for the Spanish wine country with her mother and daughter after her husband gets
Oh,
them
yes.
involved in some ish. It is predominantly in Spanish. So just a FYI on that. I know it's Eva Longoria, but this is, like I said, a very Spanish influenced series. So go into it with that knowledge for needing to read a subtitle or doing a dub over. But it is definitely worth a watch and interessante to me. So that is my first hidden gem. My second is BRATS on Hulu. This is a blast from the past for all the 80s kids who were familiar with the Brat Pack. I think my mom's love of Rob Lowe and co really permeated down to me. And so I was always fascinated by the Brat Pack, especially that hold that class of actors had on those teen movies of the day. You know, like The Breakfast Club is like
Right.
still an iconic classic rite of passage film for people to watch. You have 16 Candles, you have, multiple in that era that John Hughes did.
Fears Bueller.
I mean, Ferris Bueller, yes, but he's not considered a part of the Brat Pack.
No?
The Brat Pack was
Okay.
primarily Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Andrew McCarthy, Molly Ringwald, Judd, and um,
Demi.
Demi and Allie. Not
Okay.
Allie, but I can't think of Allie's last name right now, but y'all know who I'm talking about. So
Got it.
they Andrew McCarthy was really the one who spearheaded this because he was like, I want to kind of revisit and see how everybody feels because y'all, I thought the Brat Pack was like an iconic thing that they loved and that they really like were proud of. No, it was deeply traumatizing for them to be
Wasn't it
dubbed the Brat Pack.
sex, drugs, and rock and roll?
But it's not just that. It was like they felt like it invalidated them as actors and at that time. Like they
Oh,
were these
interesting.
serious on the rise young actors. And so it made them like not want to work together anymore. It made them scatter. They felt like it had a
Uh-uh.
negative impact on their careers and like traumatic, like for years and years and years. Like that's why they're revisiting it now. Like Andrew McCarthy, like I said, is spearheading this, but he talks to Demi, he talks to Rob Lowe, who's still fine. He talks to multiple members. Molly Ringwald was not in this, which makes me sad. I'm sorry, Ali Sheedy. Ali Sheedy. Molly Ringwald was not a part of this documentary, which makes me sad because Molly is the one of the faces, if I'm honest, of the Brat Pack to me. And I would have loved to hear her perspective now, but I think she was one of those that was like, that time is gone. I don't want to focus on the past. But it was just like I said, it's fascinating to me. And this was not even necessarily our era because we were babies, if not even born yet.
Non-existent. Yeah.
So I just think it's fascinating for those of us who love Hollywood and love to understand the different iterations and
Yeah.
genres. And the fact that the Brat Pack was the start of Hollywood's fixation and fascination with younger actors and younger
Mhm.
stories, because before this, there had never been an emphasis in Hollywood on the stories of young people. It's just a
Mhm.
fascinating era to look into, right?
And now
So
we're a product of their teen movies.
we are
Interesting.
completely like we have never looked back. Hollywood said the youth, yes, and have never, ever, ever looked back, right? And so I loved it. I found it so fascinating. So Brats on Hulu. If you're interested in hearing more about the Brat Pack, check that out. So those are my two hidden gems for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening to yet another episode. Hope you are enjoying the start of the Summer Olympics. Let us know your thoughts on Simone Biles Rising documentary, as well as just, what you're watching, what you're checking out as a part of the Summer Olympics run. We'd love to hear from you.
We would love it.
Please share this episode out with everybody you know. We appreciate it. We'll be back. But in the meantime, as always, be blessed.